Within our productivity systems, so far we've covered time management and energy management. And these next two lessons will be all about the third and final piece of the productivity puzzle, which is focus management. Because you can have all the time in the world and all the energy in the world, but if you still can't figure out how to focus and actually concentrate on the task at hand, shit's still not gonna get done. If you're getting distracted by things, people, notifications, you can kiss your productivity goodbye. So what is focus? Focus is the great fight against distractions. And here's why it's so important to manage your focus. According to a University of California Irvine study, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the task after a distraction, like fully back in the zone. Think about that for a minute. You sit down to do a task, do a productivity session, you get 10 minutes in and you get a notification on your phone, let's say. You check the notification, and while you have your phone in your hand, you open up Instagram, you do the usual, you go between some apps, you're scrolling for a while, you get a message from a friend, they showed you a reel, you watch the reel, blah, blah, blah. And this is just the distraction itself. Eventually you shake it off and put your phone down. And for the next, on average, 23 minutes and 15 seconds, your brain hasn't fully returned to that zone. And that's assuming that you don't have any other distractions in that on average 23 minutes and 15 seconds. This is what's happening to people when they feel like they're always busy, but they're not really getting a whole lot done. They're working all day, they might even be cancelling plans because there's just so much on the to-do list and they don't really feel like they're taking anything off it. If this is how you feel, then this is the lesson that you might need more than any other lesson in the entire course, because we're now going to talk about what we can do to optimize our focus. So when it comes to optimizing our focus, really what we're talking about is putting systems in place for optimal focus and attention on your needle movers. We're going to start off with the golden rule. The golden rule for maximizing your focus is discipline. As unsexy as that is, it is the truth. Discipline is what allows us as human beings to be efficient, on time, organized, and most importantly in this module, focused. There are genuine real life benefits of discipline. So let's focus on those rather than how hard it is or how whatever it is. First things first, you actually get what you say you'll get done. You value and respect yourself and your time, so you don't waste that time on unnecessary tasks. Others value and respect you and your time, so they don't waste your time. For example, I was on a live call with Danielle Canty and Natalie Ellis, and they were talking about scheduling an interview with Tony Robbins for their podcast. And anybody with a schedule like Tony Robbins' schedule, like, it's probably super busy, and you're not going to be like, oh yeah, well, we can run over about half an hour what we say. Like, you're going to respect Tony Robbins' time. You know what I mean? And you absolutely need to implement this discipline in your life if you want people to respect your time in that way as well. Improved consistency, and therefore you achieve more goals. Remember what we talked about earlier with being able to just deal with the boredom that comes with consistency? That is where most people fall off. So if you've got the discipline to deal with that boredom and you can be more consistent, that's where you're going to achieve way more goals than the average person or than your previous self. Improved ability not to give in to negative emotions. That's a huge one. And you also get to push the limits of your comfort zone and therefore achieve greater feats. So now not only are you achieving more goals, but you're achieving bigger goals, and maybe goals that previously terrified you. So how discipline works. Discipline is like a muscle. The extent of your discipline will largely be determined on how disciplined you've been in the last 3 to 12 months of your life. It's literally like a muscle. If you've done weight training pretty consistently for the last 3 to 12 months, you're going to be able to use those muscles way better than somebody who hasn't. And it's the exact same with discipline. If you've been disciplined and have been implementing discipline and maybe increasing your ability to discipline yourself in the last 3 to 12 months of your life, you're going to be in a much better position in terms of where your discipline is at right now. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example of From a few years ago when I was building my online fitness business, I had built up insane levels of discipline. So it got to the point where nothing scared me and no amount of consistency bored me because I knew exactly what I was working towards and I knew exactly what I was capable of. And I knew that I was capable of getting there with that discipline by my side. Fast forward then to when the pandemic hit, or maybe even a few months down the line after that, and there was this collective lull in energy globally. And because this huge, terrible thing was happening, people were dying, people were really sick, people were uncertain about their job security and financial futures. And personally, I was drinking a glass or two of wine probably a little too frequently. And I was still working on my own projects, but it really got to the point where it felt like this doom spiral. It didn't feel like we were ever going to get out of this mess. And over those few months, my own discipline decreased a lot. And then it decreased again and it decreased again. So then when I got this new lease of life in 2021, I went back to my usual of setting really big, ambitious goals and then not having the levels of discipline that I had had in, say, 2018 when I was working on my fitness business, because I hadn't been using that discipline in the previous 3 to 12 months. That muscle had weakened. And when this happened to me, I was thinking, Jesus, there's something wrong with me. Why can't I focus for as many hours in the day as I used to? Why do I get totally derailed for almost an hour every single time a distraction comes up? It wasn't because there was anything wrong with me. It wasn't because I'd used up all of my discipline at the age of 22. Not at all. My discipline muscle was simply out of use. So it's taken some time to realize that and slowly build it back up again to the level I'm at now, where yes, I set ambitious goals, but I actually do achieve what I set out to achieve. And that's a completely different experience to have. So your ability to discipline yourself is not a reflection of you as a person, but simply of your last few months of work, which is also not a reflection of you as a person. If you haven't done a whole load of work in the last couple of months, that doesn't decrease your worth. You are whole, you are enough just as you are. And discipline is just something that we can utilize and tweak to increase our output. In terms of how discipline works and maybe how to build discipline, we've really only got so much of it. It's a limited resource at any given time. Obviously, those limits will differ based on those last 3 to 12 months, but this is why we build in systems to rely on it as little as possible. This way, when we do need it, there's plenty to go around. You'll see what I mean in a few minutes when I start talking about systems you can implement for your focus and stuff like that, and it'll all tie in. But first, how to build discipline. This shit requires patience. That thing that nobody wants to have. Patience. So maybe in your first week, you've got the discipline to do 30 minutes of productive work towards your goals each day. Maybe in the second week, you've got 45 minutes. Maybe in the third week, you reach 60 minutes a day. And so on and so forth. And like this gradually takes time to build up. But as long as you set out a plan of how much time you'd like to spend each day or each week and commit to that while still being self compassionate, you will be flying it. Or, you know what, maybe you're fine with the amount of time that you can stay focused for, but maybe you struggle with the type of activities that you have the discipline to do. This is where the comfort zone framework comes in. That is one of your bonuses for this module, and you'll find it in your member section. But essentially, what this means, and I'll use an example for this one. Let's say you are writing a book and you've gotten comfortable with the amount of time that you can write each day. Let's say you're writing for 60 minutes a day. But then it gets to the point where you actually need to start reaching out to publishers and, submitting proposals and things like that. Things that bring it into the actual real world, and it's not just you writing a book in your free time in your room. When you enter this phase, this might just be outside your comfort zone. And you might have the ability to work for 60 minutes a day by writing your book, but you might not be able to send a simple email to publishers each day. That might be too terrifying. So if that's the kind of discipline that you're struggling with, trust me, you want to have a look at the comfort zone framework. That is available to you now since you received this module. But just know that wherever you are on your journey, you don't have unlimited amounts of discipline, and it's an unrealistic standard to set for yourself anyway. However, there are systems we can put in place so that you don't have to rely on it quite as heavily. And that moves us into discussing distractions. Okay, there are two types that might stand in our way. From here, it might become clear to you which type of distraction is more of an issue for you, which is something which will be very, very valuable for you to identify. So, first things first, we have external. External distractions are things, notifications, people, things that are outside of us. You get a notification on your phone, or a family member runs into the room, something external to you. Then we have internal distractions, and these are the distractions that come from inside your own mind. So, for example, suddenly remembering the issues you're currently having with your family, or suddenly imagining some sexual fantasy. Don't lie, you've done it. But we want to minimize these bad boys, okay? Because if we just allow them to ravage our focus, we're not going to get that far. First things first, at minimizing external distractions, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. We've spoken about this before in our time management lesson, and we're going to go a little deeper here because we hear people talking about boundaries all the time, and it often just seems like some vague concept. But in reality, your boundaries will be a lot more easy to respect for both yourself and others when they're clear and actionable. So you could say, I won't go on my phone while I'm working, but let's make that a little bit more actionable. I will put my phone on do not disturb mode and put it in another room between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., excluding my lunch hour. So you can see what I mean. That is so easy to follow and almost impossible to accidentally fail on because you're no longer relying on discipline. In this first scenario here, I won't go on my phone while I'm working. That is solely relying on discipline. So we really don't want to waste it on things that could be sorted so simply and that could just have systems to be in control of them. And the reason I keep coming back to the phone example is because for most people these days, that is the main distraction. And once you pick up your phone, there are so many ways to get caught in a distraction spiral, which is basically like a productivity black hole. You just lose chunks of time and then you get really confused at the end of the day when you're like, where did all that time go? And this concept applies to any distraction that comes at you from any external source. But now let's look at a few more common examples and potential fixes. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all way to go about it, but these will help. Phone, like I said, do not disturb mode in another room or at least out of reach from your desk. Like, if it's within arm's reach, it's gonna be a lot harder to not pick it up. Other people, they can be pretty distracting. And 100% we need communication here. We cannot blame people for not respecting our boundaries if we don't clearly state them. Maybe even emails asking you to fulfill some kind of deadline, especially if they say the deadline is within 24 to 48 hours. Ideally, at the beginning of whatever relationship this is, working relationship, you want to communicate how much notice you need as early as possible and that it's non negotiable. And it's actually more fair on you and them because if they need a piece of work from you, you're going to be doing much better work if you believe your boundaries are being respected and if you weren't put under time pressure and you're not stressed out and all this stuff. They're going to get a much better result out of you and you're going to feel respected. So everybody wins in that situation. For example, when I was working with personal training clients, I would plan all their sessions ahead of time or plan their coaching calls at the start of the week. And I would have that time blocked out for them. And I would often get messages like, oh, hey, something's actually come up at 3 p.m. tomorrow when we're supposed to have our session. Could we do 3 p.m. today instead? And while technically I could probably move things around to accommodate them, that's now going to mess with the flow of my week that I had originally planned so well. And it's a form of them not respecting your time. And if you agree to that, that's you not respecting your time. And look, I'm not saying things will always go to plan, but where you can systemize them going to plan, do that. Let people know you need at least X hours notice before a deadline. It's only fair on you and it's only fair on them. And a top tip would be always to relate it back to how it will benefit them. Just be like, here, I need a bit more time and I can actually do it properly for you. I can actually do it better and give you a better result. I will just say, yes, we did briefly speak about the phone thing, the boundaries thing, the communication thing in the time management module, and that's because this all just morphs into itself. It's all interlinked. So when it comes to certain parts of it, it's quite difficult to separate these things, because how you set up your time with time blocks and theming your days, that will lead into how focused you are. And that's then going to impact how much time you've got left. And these things are completely interlinked. So there's a bit of repetition here, and that's just because we're looking at it from the opposite angle. All right, let's talk minimizing internal distractions. It might feel redundant or outside of your control to be able to stop thoughts coming into your head, and I get that, but I assure you it's not. And that's exactly why I feel it necessary to share this tip with you. So let me ask you this. When you do productive work, we don't want excessive, unnecessary thoughts popping into our heads. Yes? Would you agree? So what practice allows us to emulate that and improve that skill? Meditation. Meditation before productive work. When you meditate, thoughts come into your head and you gently push them out, or you gently quiet them. And that's the practice we want to get better at in our actual work. You can even go out of your way to search YouTube or Spotify, etc., for meditation for productivity, meditation for creativity, meditation for improved focus, and so on. And can't you see how this would be transformational for your ability to focus? If you have done even just a 10-minute meditation before your productive work, before your workday begins, can't you see how you would already be in the practice of gently pushing those excessive, unnecessary thoughts aside? This has massively improved my ability to focus. And if you're still noticing that there's thoughts coming up for you that are distracting you because they're like to-dos, important tasks, brain dump. Brain dump. For example, what if you just remembered someone you needed to send a form to, or someone you need to reply to on Instagram, and so on? Your brain dump list is going to help you with this. So this is going to be an easy to access list in your workspace for life admin, random tasks you need to do, loose ends you need to tie up, so that you can remove it from your mind and get it onto your list, whether that's a paper list or digital list on a document somewhere, just so that it's out of your mind, because that takes up subconscious space in your mind. So that when you're working away and a thought enters your mind about something you need to do, you get to simply remove it from your mind and write it down on paper or put it on your document so that it doesn't interrupt your flow. Because the thing is, if you stop your work to do even just a short task, you come back in a totally different headspace, a reactive headspace. At the same time, you should still be able to take breaks, but just be mindful of what you do during those breaks. Make sure you're not switching up your brain into reactive mode. A popular option when it comes to having regular breaks is the Pomodoro method, which is where you spend 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off. But honestly, tweak this to whatever suits you. You might be in a situation where 25 minutes is too long to focus for, so switch it to 15 minutes and then a 3-minute break, or even still a 5-minute break. Okay, let's talk pre-focus zone intention setting. This is a lot of words, but essentially, the zone is that state you get into. It's like flow. You're on fire, your fingers are typing away at the keyboard, you're ticking things off the list, you're moving with great momentum, efficiency, and flow. It feels amazing. And if you really want to hammer down on improving your ability to focus, this will really come down to setting clear intentions before sitting down to do your productive work. And what I mean by this is, before entering that focus zone, you want to set clear intentions for the session. So exactly what you want to do in that session, exactly what you want to achieve. Duration, breaks, when the breaks are and how long they are, exactly what you want to achieve before the timer goes off, and so on. You're not just saying, I'm going to do some social media content, because that's pretty vague. You'll actually say, in the next 60 minutes, I will have filmed 5 niche specific TikToks talking to the camera. So that's very, very clear. You know that it's not a trend you're doing, it's not a voiceover you're doing, it's talking directly to the camera within your niche. And you're going to do 5 of them, and you're going to do it in the next 60 minutes. So during your productivity session, then you'll notice you are in the zone more because you're aware that there's an acute deadline and time is elapsing before your eyes. Even more so if you've got a countdown timer on your screen. I love having flip timers on my screen. So speaking of, you can have a look at the description below for my go-to flip timer YouTube channels. Because some of them, they just aren't really the vibe. Some of them have really annoying music, or like they just have a weird cartoon, or it's just kind of annoying. But have a look in the description. Those are the ones that I use pretty much every day. All right, we've covered a lot in this session because there really is a lot that goes into maximizing your focus. And I mean, that's something that a lot of people totally disregard when it comes to being more productive overall. So you are already way, 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 way ahead of the curve by even just watching this lesson. So, with all that said, I will see you in the next lesson where we'll talk about optimizing your environment for maximum focus. See you there.